Good morning. Welcome to Financial Lovemaking. I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. This is where we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. I'm here with my buddy, partner, and co-host, Miss S. Tia Brown. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Now, you wanted to tell me about some of this sheer ratchetry going on Love and Hip Hop,
Oh, yes, one of
involving
my
the singer
favorite
Marion.
shows. One of my favorite shows. Boyce loves to say that it's overly ratchet. It is true, and that's why I like to watch it. Love and Hip Hop is a huge franchise on VH1 that is now in three cities. The original Love and Hip Hop started in New York. Then there's Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, which is infamously known for Stevie J and Jocelyn. And the new extension of the franchise is Love and Hip Hop Hollywood or Los Angeles. And it stars a couple of familiar faces, including Soldier Boy, who's dating Teddy Riley's daughter, of all people, right? Teddy Riley, super producer, founder of New Jack Swing, my favorite genre of music ever. And then you also have Omarion from B2K. Now, B2K was this huge group in the early 2000s. Omarion went on to have a relatively successful solo career. Now he's like 29 and he's in a serious relationship. They recently had a child. He's dating a woman named April, who's also on the show. Very beautiful girl. She looks like, the stereotypical Hollywood exotic, mixed black girl with a little bit of something else in her and a little bit of ratchetness as well, though she keeps it classy. And on the show, we get to see that there's tension between April and Omarion's mother, Leslie, who had Omarion at 16 and believes that because she's now in her mid 40s and she's having health issues, she's experiencing seizures, Omarion should be taking care of all of her financial needs. And Omarion doesn't feel this way. He's in one of those positions where he wants to focus on his new family, and April and Leslie are kind of experiencing a tension because Leslie doesn't like the fact that she's being replaced by another woman. April, by the way, is all for, be supportive of your mom, but the mother's kind of projecting her anger. Now, fast forward a few months because reality television is, a little bit dated. We're seeing that Leslie has accused April of cheating on Omarion and said that the baby that they had a few months ago, a son named Mega, they're Hollywood people, don't, Mega, it is what it is not biologically Omarion's child. And it's because of how the baby looks. Now, as people often assume that if a baby isn't a certain hue and doesn't have a certain hair texture, that, it's not the dad's. And this baby has straighter hair and is a little bit more fair skinned. Omarion has curlier hair and is medium brown. And the mom is saying, see, that's not your baby. She hoodwinked you. That's her ex's baby. And demanded a paternity test. So the rumor was that this couple split because April refused.
Okay.
Omarion is saying, that's my baby. We don't know if they had a test. That's personal. He hasn't revealed. He says on Twitter or, social media, Maury approved or whatever. But we know that that's not necessarily the case. That could just be how he's feeling. But, this brings up a big issue about paternity, especially when you have someone who's a man of means and child support and women hoodwinking men into believing that they have a child that isn't theirs. And he's not the only star that this accusation has happened to. Infamously, Neo, the R&B singer, was told by one of his girlfriends, an ex now, that he was the father of her child, and later came out that he wasn't. And he was devastated because he thought this was his firstborn son. So, Boyce, what do you think? Should Omarion have that test?
Well, it's interesting because there is kind of it happens more than people think. I mean, paternity fraud, as they might call it. There are a lot of cases where this does occur, and there is a lot of really interesting behavior that goes on between the male and the female. Whether when you look at every species across the animal kingdom, and I love studying evolutionary biology
Yeah.
because it helps me understand
Taking it
humans.
back to the mammals.
Yes, it helps me understand humans. And Stanford professor Robert Sapolsky, who I'm a big fan of now, breaks down a lot of how human beings interact, and the fact that females often will cheat on males at certain times based on what's going on with their hormones or whatever the case may be. And so it's not out of the question that this has occurred. And what's also true is that even among other species, there are many cases where females will have a child and let the man just think that it's his. And
So apes, so monkeys are running game on monkeys, lionesses are
yes,
running games on.
monkeys, birds, all kinds of stuff, and in fact, it's funny because he was saying that you can break the animal kingdom into two types of species. You've got the trophy species and the pair bonded species, and to make it simple, the pair bonded species consists of cases where the males and the females both take care of the kids. In the trophy species, the men just 5% of the males produce 95% of the offspring.
Mhm.
So the men are just rolling stones. Whereas in pair bonded species, the males and the females both take care of the children. And actually, literally, it translates into how many babies the women have, the likelihood of them having twins. Because if they have twins, they know that they've got another person to take care of the kids. And check this out, you're going to think this is hilarious. In the pair bonded species, females are more likely to cheat because they're like, well, I got a man at home taking care of the baby, so I can go out and get some in the middle of the night, and it's all good. And there are so many cases where the female turns up pregnant. A monkey is not going to get a DNA test, so the monkey's like taking care of this baby that's not his. Now, let's move it away from monkeys and talk about human beings. Uh, you know, I think that with Omarion, I think what might be going on is probably some mixed emotions. One, you got this baby there. The baby has nothing to do with the drama under which he came into this world. He may love this child. I know that feeling. I know the feeling of loving a child as if it were your own, and not really caring who the sperm donor was. So he may be at a point where he's like, you know what? I don't even want to know. I don't really care. But at the same time, I think that there is information being transmitted by the fact that she does not want to get that paternity test. I think that she's scared.
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly, if that's true, right? If that's true, and she doesn't want to get that test, I'm sorry. I mean, maybe there's a possibility that she's just so appalled that he would ask her this question, that he doesn't trust her, that she's, okay, whatever. But the fact is that if the baby's his and you know it's his, then get the test so you can know it's his. But think about it. There's so much at stake for her that if she finds out that so and so was the dad, then number one, it's affecting your relationship because you're going to have all these long, difficult conversations where you're retracing history and saying, "Oh, I was only with him when I went to that weekend in Vegas, and I said I was with my sister or whatever." But then you have the possibility that he's going to stop supporting her financially, and that he's going to
Absolutely.
stop being there for his child emotionally. So that fear of abandonment, I think, is what drives a lot of when women are in those situations. I think that drives a lot of their activity in those cases.
I absolutely agree. And that's why it's important for women to be upfront from the beginning so you can make a decision about what you want based on knowing that if, whatever decision your partner might make. It's really sad that Omarion and April are in this situation because either way, like you said earlier, the real person that loses is the baby. But as men, I mean, for men, we don't really always think about how they feel emotionally. For the last, 8, 9 months, he was thinking about just being a dad for the first time. So the possibility of having that ripped out of his life is also devastating. So my advice to the couple is if you haven't gotten a paternity test, get it done. It's better to know so this won't loom over the relationship. And then you can make a decision from there. If the baby's not his, he should be able to decide whether or not he wants to play a role in this child's life. And it's better to do it while he's young. And April will have to face the consequence of her action.
Right, and I think you also have to talk about this whole, mama's son kind of thing going on here,
Absolutely.
which I
Good thing
think,
you brought that up. Yeah.
which I think is huge in so many of the single parent households that we have. I know a lot of guys who are raised by single moms who don't feel they can actually have healthy relationships with women because they've already got a wife, and that.
Mommy is the wife.
Right. That's because in many of those cases, the mother has dedicated so much of herself to raising this boy that when it's time for him to be a man and to detach the umbilical cord, she ain't ready to go. She's because that's her man. Why
And
would
she
you?
also feels that he is now indebted to her for the
Exactly.
choice that she made, the sacrifice that she decided to make after making the consequences of that choice. He is now indebted to you. And the truth is he's not. You want your son, you should want your son to go on and be the best man he could be to someone else. And you have to be able to, as the mom, move forward and say, I have the faith that I will find someone to compliment me in a romantic way. I'm not going to continue to, promote this unhealthy dynamic of having my son fill this void because eventually he's the person who suffers.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think it's, I think it's important when a man decides to commit to a family that he realizes that that has to be his first priority. I mean, if you're serious about it, if you're serious about the woman, you're serious about the child, you got to let the mama know. Look, there'll always be a place for you, but you're going to have to take a back seat. You can't. You're not my wife. You're not the woman of the house. You need to find your own man in order to do that.
Right.
Because I'm not that guy, and I think that's because that's I can just think of a friend I had where his girlfriend. I remember it was very strange. She every time I talked to her, just in passing, she would just pour out all these frustrations with
Mhm.
my friend's mother, and I felt very uncomfortable in these conversations because this was my friend we were talking about. I didn't want to get into he say she say, with one
Absolutely.
of my buddies, but it was really interesting. She said that she said every time we plan to do something together, his mother happens to call and tells him, "I need you to go to the grocery store for me," and he would get up and grab his stuff and leave and go to his mama and go take her to the grocery store, and I just thought that's so interesting because she's not getting a full man, she's not getting a complete man, she's not getting a grown man. You're right, she's getting a little boy and she's getting half a man. Right, and I wanted to say to her, which I did not do because it wasn't my business, but I wanted to say to her, you need to go find you a man because you don't have a man right now.
Right. So this is the thing. I don't want to vilify the mama's boy, right? Because in some ways, he's doing the right thing. He's showing loyalty to someone who took care of him. And he also someone who he's been taught for the last 20, 30 years that it's his job to protect. So in that way, it's a good thing. The problem is being able to shift that dynamic into to a healthier relationship and redirecting some of that energy around protecting and loyalty to the person who is your spouse. So for moms who are raising boys, it's very important for them rather, to make sure that they're not teaching their son to be their husband. They're not your life partner. They're your child. And some of the things that they may have to do may be a heightened level of responsibility because you're a single parent. But at the end of the day, they're not there to fill an emotional void. And your son will always choose you as his mother. He should not have to choose you as his wife. He can't replace the man who left you or who it didn't work out with or who you decided to leave because you realized that wasn't a healthy situation.
Hmm. And I want to throw this out before I let you get the last word. Um, I think first and foremost, I think it is the job of the mother, as you mentioned, to cut that cord because a lot of sons really have a hard time doing that. There's so much guilt that comes with having a mother that's constantly leaning on you and making you feel that you have to be the man of her house and the man of somebody else's house. It's really baby mama drama with your actual mama. Um,
Okay, before you finish that statement, I don't want to make it seem, that all mothers create mama's boys by doing that, right? Sometimes it's boys also seeing that mom has it really hard and wanting to make it easier for her, wanting to be more supportive. And it creates this unhealthy dynamic which lacks boundaries. I don't think all moms are purposely, intentionally going after it in that way.
Right. Well, that's what I say. I mean, I think that those boundaries have to be drawn. I mean, I
Right.
think that obviously you're expected to be a part of your son's life forever, but when you're interfering with his relationships, giving unsolicited advice, putting pressure on the woman that he's choosing to be with,
Mm-hmm.
pulling him away constantly from his expectations and obligations as a man, then that's a problem. You're
Right.
claiming something that does not belong to you and claiming it in a way that's not appropriate. I would never get in the lives of one of my daughters and say, I need you to do what a wife would do for me. That would be a horrible thing for me to do as a dad. And so I think that we know when people cross those lines, and I think that basically when anybody starts getting uncomfortable, then somebody's crossed the line. Now, one thing I want to throw in here that just so I can give you this data before I let you go, I actually did some research real quick, some ad hoc research while we were talking on the rate of false paternity or what they call paternity fraud. Now, what I found here is that the rate of paternity fraud where men are raising kids that they think are their own and they're not. It varies around the world, but according to the study cited here, in Canada the rate is 4%. In France, it's 2.8%. In Mexico, it's as high as 11.8%. And in the U.S., I saw 5 to 7%.
Okay.
So,
So that's an important statistic to note as well. Now, excuse me, there are cases that won't go reported, right? But also, I love that that this evidence shows that we cannot vilify women and make it seem like the vast majority of us are
no.
going out there trying to hook in a man and you are the father, because statistics show that that's not the case.
hmm Right, I agree. I mean, and I think it does beg that question. What do you do if you did get caught between men and you're not sure who the father is? I mean, do you fess up and risk losing the provider or in the relationship that you're in, or do you kind of keep that tucked away? And I think that I think that there are many cases where it's almost understandable, though unethical, for someone to keep that tucked away, right? And I think that's unfortunate. I think that when men do find out that they're not the father, they should be allowed to relinquish their financial responsibility. But unfortunately, in the courts, the one famous case was one that happened in L.A. With a guy named Navarro, and basically he found out that the kids weren't his, and he wanted to have his child support cut, and the judge was like, no. You got to keep paying. You've been paying. They know you as their dad, and so that's your responsibility. So I think maybe that does say that if you do decide to get into the baby mama, baby daddy game, where you have kids out of wedlock or even in wedlock, whatever, protect yourself in advance. I don't know if it would mean some sort of legal agreement or whatever. I don't know, but you have to protect yourself because these things do happen.
I agree. I am not one who thinks that men who have been hoodwinked in any way should be liable for the livelihood of a child that they did not willingly produce, and for someone else's lies and selfish choices. So I think addressing the situation at the beginning is always the best. It's a very hard choice, but ultimately you want to be selfless, not just for your partner, but really for your child. Because again, so much of the child's identity comes from who they believe their father to be. So you don't want a child to grow up 10, 15, 20 years thinking that one man is their child, is their father, and shaping who they are in terms of not just the way he interacts with them and his family, but also who they believe themselves innately to be, only to be crushed later to find out it's not the case. So if you can't do it for yourself, you can't do it for your partner, do it for your child. We'd love to
Absolutely.
hear what you guys think about this topic. Should Omarion get a real paternity test if he hasn't already? Let us know.